Hello all. Good morning to you. This is Raman from Cybersecurity Group India. Thanks for joining this webinar. This is the DTC Digital Transformation Council DTC Asia webinar on the industrial cybersecurity, bringing the OT and IT divide. Digital Transformation Council is basically meant for end users only. It is a place for people to connect, collaborate, learn, and share with peers who are digitizing and transforming their organizations. DTC consists of members drawn from executives, vice president, managers at end user organization together with representative from ARC. ARC conducts research, organizes meetings, provides venues, manages, and other supports to the council. Council members share the information regularly to participate in the surveys and have the access for survey results. To learn more about it, please log into www.arcweb.com DTC. The agenda for today is for about 60 minutes. The topic introduction will be done by Bob Gill, my colleague, General Manager from Southeast Asia, ARC Advisory Group. Today's guest speaker is Michael Wong, Principal Instrumentation Control Engineer, Group Technical Solutions, Petronas. After the guest speaker and the topic introduction done by Bob, we'll have panel discussion by Bob Gill along with Michael Wong. Following that, would be open for audience Q&A. And please put the audience Q&A in the chat box. Then we'll move on to the next activity. Topic introduction will be done by Mr. Bob Gill. Bob, can you please take over?
Yes, thank you, Raman. Thank you for the introduction, and let me extend my own welcome to you all for this first Digital Transformation Council Asia event of 2025. I think some of you may be joining us for the first time, while I'm sure there's many others who attended many of our previous DTC events in previous years. As my colleague Raman just mentioned, the aim of the Digital Transformation Council Asia meetings like this one is to provide an opportunity for you, our audience, to learn from your industry peers who are digitally transforming their facilities and their organizations. And indeed, over the last close to 5 years, we've covered many different facets of this topic and gained an insight into the real-life projects revealed by our guest speakers, including the reasons and rationale behind embarking on a transformation initiative, the types of technology that is being deployed, the organizational issues and implications associated with transformation, the benefits gained, and also the challenges, and there are challenges, the challenges experienced. And one of the challenges that is often mentioned by our speakers during these meetings is that of cybersecurity. And I'm sure you'll know this, but because in order to digitalize, we need to connect. So we have greater connection internally between the IT and OT layers. We have more connection externally through, for example, enabling remote access by equipment suppliers and third-party maintenance organizations. And increasingly, we have connection to off-site cloud-based applications. We are also faced with a cyber threat environment that continues to increase in scope and in seriousness. So in order to reap the advantages of digitalization, but at the same time not compromise the security of critical industrial facilities, these digital transformation efforts and initiatives should really be allied with rigorous efforts in cybersecurity. And that's one of the reasons why industrial cybersecurity has been a very active area of ARC research for well over a decade now, addressing the triumvirate of people, processes, and technology through our market research reports, through our consulting engagements, and at our conferences, our ARC forums. So, speaking at one of our recent ARC forums in the US, a vice president for cybersecurity at a major corporation there said this: people, processes, and technology are all important issues that cybersecurity strategies must address, but they must be attacked in that order: people, processes, and technology. And today, our guest speaker will be taking us through his experience of leading an enterprise-wide OT cybersecurity program, where one of the key issues, as you'll find out, was indeed people, namely how to get effective collaboration between traditionally distinct IT and OT cybersecurity groups, and in so doing, improve the overall security profile of the organization. So with that, let me hand over to our guest speaker, who, as you've heard, is Michael Ong, Principal Instrumentation and Control Engineer, Group Technical Solutions at Petronas, up in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And for his presentation, Industrial Cybersecurity, Bridging the OT-IT Divide. So Michael, welcome, a big, nice, warm welcome to you. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Great. Right. Thank you, Bob, for that wonderful introduction. I think that was very useful to set the context of what we'll be talking today. I think a lot has been spoken about the interconnection between OT as well as IT when it comes to cybersecurity, mainly along the lines of the technology and the processes involved. But not a lot has been spoken about the people aspect of things. And Bob rightly said, it is really critical to ensure the success of the team, right? So my presentation today will be really focused on how do we get these two distinct tribes who are working mostly along the same alignment to secure the enterprise, but having very different backgrounds and very different security objectives. How do we get them to work together? And this has been my experience working on this cybersecurity enterprise-wide program for Petronas. Okay, so just a little bit more about myself. I was a graduate of the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I've had about 18 or so years in the oil and gas industry as an instrumentation and control engineer. And I have been certified through the IEC 62443 program as an expert. And we recently also launched this Petronas Industrial Cybersecurity End User Roundtable, which is a gathering of end users of OT equipment across Malaysia to sort of mature the cybersecurity space within the country. Okay. Right. So I'm gonna start my presentation a little bit with some definitions, so we just get this out of the way. So operational technology refers to more like systems, cyber systems or sensors and actuators that are used in an industrial setting, right? And IT is stands for information technology, and these are more like the computers, laptops, printers, and cyber physical devices that you use from
Michael, sorry, we are not able to see your screen. Could you share your screen? We are not able to see your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I am sharing my screen. I'll stop sharing and try to share it again. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, Michael. Michael, we can see it now. Yes, thanks.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so that's OT, that's IT, and then there's that other abbreviation, IoT, which stands for the Internet of Things, where you have various sensors and actuators talking together in a very interconnected way. I think this is one of those misconceptions that OT is also IoT, but the reality is that they are different things. Yeah, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. And when IoT is used in an industrial setting, then that is defined as IIoT. Right. So this slide shows the differences between IT and OT in terms of security objectives. What we find is that for IT, a lot of times what is of paramount importance is confidentiality, followed by integrity and then availability. Yeah. And then for OT, things are flipped, where availability, integrity, and then confidentiality are the security priorities. If you think about it, if you think about IT systems like used in the finance sector or in government, confidentiality is of paramount importance because those systems tend to hold a lot of data that are personal identifiable data, right? That needs to be properly secured. However, in OT, you don't have that kind of personal data. Things are more about keeping the plant or manufacturing processes running. So availability is of course of critical importance there. Right. Some other differences between the IT and the OT domains is, IT tends to be leading edge. The life cycle of products are pretty typically short, right? Typically 3 to 5 years. They believe in things moving quickly, move fast and break things, minimum viable products, all those kind of thinking where things need to evolve very quickly, and it's okay to make mistakes, yeah, as long as you are progressing. However, such approach does not work in the OT world. Typically, when lives and also infrastructure is at stake, the OT world tends to be a lot more conservative in its thinking, right? So a lot of times we have to doubly be sure, about certain things, certain decisions that we make. There is engineering discipline built into the way that people in the OT domain operate. We are also required to test, and test again. And in terms of the life cycle of products, typically they are between 10 to 20 years, right? So very long period of time. And these are generally the differences you see between the IT and OT domains, leading to some kind of sometimes misunderstandings between the two teams. So I'll talk a little bit more about the individuals, right? Because this is really about the general domain and how the thinking goes in when people are working within those circles. Okay, so the next slide, this slide shows us about the high-level flow of our cybersecurity program in Petronas. In 2018 or 2019, we embarked on an enterprise-wide cybersecurity program. This was really to support our very large digital push, yeah, towards digitalization. We cannot have the sort of digitalized capabilities that we wanted without having that core layer of cybersecurity at the bottom to support all of those digital capabilities, right? And a lot of this, when it comes to OT, yeah, one of the big digital pushes that we were moving for was the liberalization of OT data, things like data from the wells or data from the equipment to have more informed diagnostics, yeah, when it comes to preventive maintenance activities, things like that, right? So we really needed to have that strong foundation, one of them being cybersecurity, right? So in that program, among the thrusts or the focus areas that we were looking at was the area of governance. Yeah, how do we properly govern in cybersecurity, not just IT, but OT as well, across the organization. That led to the development of our framework, standard, and guidelines. We also set up our SOC. SOC stands for Security Operations Center, where all the telemetry and all the data from both IT and OT gets sent to a central monitoring system, where 24/7 we have a team looking out for cyber-related incidences, right? So we designed the SOC, we built the SOC, and now that is in operation, right? We also looked at how could we build a centralized patch management infrastructure for OT, where traditionally OT machines would be patched in a very siloed manner, and that led to different patch versions, different cybersecurity maturity levels across sites. So we really wanted to resolve it by having a centralized management infrastructure. So we designed, we executed, and now it's been fully deployed and fully operational. And on the site level, changes also had to be made, right? So we deployed together with the vendors, rolling out that integration step from site level to that centralized SOC and also centralized patching infrastructure. We also boosted the physical security that happened on the site. It was a very holistic program, and we're very proud about that. And finally, you could have all the processes, wonderful technology, cutting edge and all that. But if you don't win the hearts and minds of people, if your employees are not on board, then the whole program falls apart. That's why we had a very important focus on change management, right? This is not management of change. This is change management where we actually, educated and upskilled our workforce, empowered every individual as part of our human firewall to protect Petronas from cyber threats, right? So we spent a lot of effort and resources on visual management, training, as well as engagements of our staff. So you can see here that the enterprise-wide program for cybersecurity for Petronas was pretty holistic, and it's been pretty successful. Yeah. Right. So in this slide, we show the different components or moving parts that were required for the program to work. Right in the center, we set up a central governance body for cybersecurity under our CISO, where the SOC sits and where governance for cybersecurity is generally managed. We also required support from our various vendors. For those who don't know, the OT domain is a very sort of a ring-fenced industry where all the vendors are, very big on being proprietary, right, to ensure the performance of their systems. So it was very important for them to be on board and also to deploy solutions that they had validated and they had verified and they're comfortable with, right? We also had other governing bodies within Petronas that are like the group technical solutions on the right, together with the upstream COE to sort of lend that engineering governance side of things, right, to gain support from the sites, to work together with that Petronas Cybersecurity Central Governance for a very holistic program. And then all of that comes together to be rolled out to the individual sites. And Petronas being a very, very diverse company in terms of archetypes, it was really important that everybody got on board for a successful program, right? So back to the difference between IT personnel and OT personnel. So where do all these resources reside? Well, looking at the slide here, you can see that it makes sense, right? Most of the engineers from the OT world would be on site level, right? These are the guys who are operating the facilities, running preventive maintenance, day-to-day operations, and things like that. And then for the engineering governance side of things, group technical solutions and the upstream COE had or houses engineers as well. A lot of them coming from the sites, and the vendors were also engineers, right? So right in the center, a lot of the security talent was from the IT world. So as you can imagine, this did pose a little bit of a challenge in terms of what we talked about earlier, right? Coming from different domains, having different security objectives. So how do we make everybody work together at the end of the day? Okay. Just to elaborate a little bit more about the differences in personnel, here's a slide showing what a typical IT or a typical OT persona would look like, right? And I've also jokingly included some of the stereotypes. Okay, so for a typical IT security executive, the main focus of this person would most likely be, how do I cyber secure my organization? And, I would love to throw in the latest and the greatest technology out there because that's going to protect me from all the different emerging threats, right? This person most likely has malware for breakfast, knows how to deal with all the different types of vulnerabilities that are out there, very well versed with vulnerability management, things like that. Understands how to, troubleshoot from reading security logs from Windows, has a very strong networking background, and probably has the thought process of, if it's stuck, if there's something wrong, I'll just reboot and it's fine, right? And for this person, security is everything. It is core of what this person does in the organization, right? However, if you look at the OT engineer, right? The OT engineer's main priority is, how do I keep my production running, right? How do I ensure that the lights stay on? How do I ensure that the water that I produce continues to be flowing and is to the required standards? How do I keep producing gas or energy, right? And also, of course, working in an oil and gas environment, the thinking is always, how do I do this safely? How do I not mess up or blow things up and cause a catastrophic event, right? Because lives are at stake here, right? And because of this experience training that the engineer gets, then the thinking is typically quite structured and quite rigid, right? Nothing beyond what we normally do. If there's a deviation, then it doesn't happen without a risk assessment. OT engineers are also notoriously territorial, right? Basically, they would not let anyone touch their stuff because of how sensitive these equipment can be. They love reading functional block diagrams, right? And security is not everything that they do. It is a subset of what they do. It is important, but it's not the core of what they do on a day-to-day basis, right? So the next segment of my presentation, we're going to be talking about how do we make these two groups of people who generally have the same true north, right? The same objective, right? To how do I keep things running in a safe manner, right? That should really be the true north, right? For the organization. So how do we get these two tribes to work together harmoniously for the organization to achieve its security objectives? Well, the very first thing that I think about is that we really need to recognize that both parties, both tribes, IT and OT, we have a shared future, right? And if there's nothing else you take from this talk today, please remember this point, right? That we need to recognize that IT and OT has a shared future, because looking at the trends and what's been happening actually for the past 10, 20 years, OT equipment are increasingly becoming more IT-like. Things are commercially off the shelf, right? We are running Windows, we are running hardware servers from Dell and HP, which are very typical IT equipment, right? The thing is that with digitalization focused organizations like Petronas, these two domains will collide, right? In OT, we need data from IT, and in IT, to push for more digitalization capabilities, we need data from OT, right? So there has to be a transfer of data, transfer of information. It is inevitable, right? The future of IT and OT is one that is shared, okay? And really, because of this, we may not have it today, but we're already seeing evidences of the emergence of a new sort of group of talents which are hybrid skilled, both very strong in IT security as well as having an OT background, right? So this is something that we should be looking out for. Right. The second point is to have a mutual respect for one another. I think we need to celebrate and also recognize the technical strengths that each one of us possesses, right? So for an IT security specialist, there will be, how do you sort of troubleshoot a cybersecurity event, right? How do you do digital forensics on a machine? How do you, calculate the number of IP addresses you can have on the network? Things like that, which a typical OT engineer might not have, right? And the OT engineer, on the other hand, would be very, well versed with that proprietary Siemens DCS or Yokogawa PLC, right? So the thing is that everybody has their strengths and a way to contribute to the company's security goals, right? At the same time, also that how I mentioned that OT engineers are very territorial. Well, yeah. So each side has to also have mutual respect for each other's turf. right? The third point is that, in my point of view, if it's an OT cybersecurity program, OT has to lead, right? If we are implementing any changes with the OT domain, the guys in the OT domain have to recognize the value and have to want it and have to drive it, right? The resources, things like funding and things like support can come from other sources, but it's really important that the OT domain personnel have to take the lead, okay? And what's really effective is that, to have a very influential individual from that OT domain to lead the program, right? And get the word out. And just in jest, if you give him a fancy title, then maybe with a salary bump, now that's optional. But that would really go a long way with getting the folks on the site on board with the cybersecurity program. Right. The fourth point is to have a clear demarcation of duties. It's really important that these things don't overlap between the IT security personnel and the OT personnel. There has to be a clear RASI chart, right? Roles and responsibilities have to be laid out so that everybody knows what to do, where the respective levels of authority lie, right? So it's okay to have technical authorities from both the IT and the OT side. Generally, when we have a program or a project that involves both IT and OT interconnecting domains, then we typically have the respective technical authorities sign on any of the design documents or firewall changes, right? So it's also really important that that we segregate those roles, right? Whether it's a technical authority for OT, the CISO, the SOC team, everybody has a role to play. Right, and it's very important that all of these rules are properly documented and properly communicated to avoid any sort of conflict that could happen. Right, and then the fifth point is to develop opportunities for future engagements or even create little projects, right, that people can be working on together. The enterprise-wide campaign for Petronas lasted for about 4 to 5 years. And it was a very, I would say, very successful one. But the journey had to continue, right? Once a cybersecurity program is been implemented, there still has to be operations, maintenance, and optimization of whatever we've put in place, right? So after the big cyber campaign, then the IT and the OT teams have to sit down and discuss to see what's next, right? And very much like IT equipment that has a very short sort of life cycle, it's a good idea to have a 3 to 5 year roadmap that involves everybody. What are the different things that we need to do together? How do we improve our processes or our governance documents, or even like if there's a need for tech upgrades, how do we tackle that together? And then moving on in the operational point of view, how do we tackle those documentation approvals, right? If somebody needs to do a design change that involves IT and OT, right? And God forbid, if there's a cyber incident that happens in your facility, you would want both IT and OT expertise to come together, put their heads together, and to sort of contain and resolve whatever cyber incidences that may come. Okay. The other interesting thing was also on career development, right? That's something that both sides can also start talking about and start discussing. That leads me to my next point, which is point number 6. We need to nurture that intersecting career paths. I think we realize by now that both skills, even though they are distinct, but as the future progresses, there will be a need for some talent that is hybrid skill. Yeah. Our OT engineers should be able to sort of deploy cybersecurity solutions, comply with the IEC standards or national regulatory standards on their own. At the same time, we also want IT security personnel to understand the intricacies of operating an OT facility and what goes into securing an OT system, right? But at the end of the day, we also realize that there's an overlap in terms of skills, and there's definitely an opportunity for collaboration. one thing that we did in our organization, at least for the OT side of things, to help upskill our IT security engineers, we also crafted a career path, right, or sort of a training path, an upskilling path for the different IT security personnel. You know, Petronas has a very strong engineering upskilling sort of background, right, with a lot of training materials and resources available to upskill our engineers. And a lot of those training programs, especially those involved with OT systems, are definitely useful for upskilling our IT security team. Okay, so in summary, these are the 6 main points on how do you keep the peace, or maybe keep the peace is kind of a negative way of putting it, but you know, like it's as if we're tolerating each other. But you know, we can flourish, right? Because we have a joint future, right? We have a future together. This is what's going to be sort of the trend on where engineering and IT security is going to go. So we need this relationship to flourish. So number one, again, you know, let's recognize that we have a shared future, both IT and OT security. We need to have mutual respect for our technical strengths. We have a lot of specialization and very good technical capabilities. For an OT program, the OT domain should lead. Number 4, have a clear demarcation of duties between IT and OT personnel. Number 5, develop opportunities for future engagements and mini projects as a team that works together, plays together, stays together. And number 6, to nurture the intersecting career paths. Okay, so with that concludes my presentation. I'll just leave you with a really quick cartoon. So it's really important that for a successful IT, OT security program, we need to build bridges, but do keep those networks segregated. With that, I thank you very much for your time, and I'll hand over the time to Bob, sorry.
Sure. Thank you very much, Michael, for that very enlightening presentation, detailing your experience of cybersecurity at Petronas. We are going into the Q&A session right now, so I do encourage you to post your questions for Michael into the Q&A box that you'll see on your screen. Before then, I'll ask some of my own questions which cropped up as I was listening to Michael just now. And a reminder that Michael is based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, working for Petronas, which is the Malaysian national oil and gas company. So behind Michael, you'll see on his screen is the Petronas. It's part of the Petronas Twin Towers, quite a stunning building in KL if you ever get the chance to go up there. So yeah, Michael, just let me ask you a couple of things. As I mentioned earlier, ARC, we've done quite a lot of research into cybersecurity. And one of our findings has been that IT cybersecurity programs and skills tend to be much more advanced than those in OT. And additionally, the spend on OT cybersecurity technology versus IT is only about 10% of what's spent in IT. So with that, can I ask, was it actually more, I know you talked about the importance of having OT to lead the initiative. So, but was it more difficult for OT to exert influence in the program, given that kind of imbalance on skills and investment that is apparent in the industry?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Bob. Yeah, actually, I think it was really important to align the team from the start on what was the main goal of us getting together, right? And at the end of the day, the true north that everybody aligned to was, you know, let's get together to secure the organization for the betterment of Petronas. Let's put down our egos aside. I know you have your capabilities, your talents in your particular field. But at the end of the day, the interest is the company, right? The company as a whole. So you're right. IT security is eons ahead of OT security because if you look at the traditional way that OT has been set up, they're in a nice, cushy little corner, right? And you have all these layers of IT security on top. And IT typically is the one that's been exposed, right, to the world. But as digitalization came about, then these sort of layers of protection suddenly started having holes and pathways through them. And that's where OT security started to gain traction. And in a way, we're catching up with what the IT world is doing. Yeah, I think the IT security world is quite a red ocean already. Lots of security products out there, but there's still a lot of opportunity in OT security, and it's definitely an exciting field to be in right now.
Okay, thank you. You use this phrase a few times during the presentation about keeping the peace, and so I wonder, when you started the program, what was the extent of the quality of the relationship between the IT and OT cybersecurity groups? Was it good? Was there a mini war going on, or kind of how was it, and how did it improve along as the program went along?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Rob. I won't go into too much detail because it might be a little bit sensitive for some of our viewers here. Yeah, I think initially there was a lot of reservation, right? Because you have two separate groups with different security objectives, different tolerance for risk, coming together with a similar objective. And we got a lot of fantastic feedback from the IT security team, but a lot of times we had to tell them, cool your jets, right? We can't do this because of this, right? Let's be a little bit more careful about certain things that we do. We are working around a lot of constraints, right, when it comes to an operating facility. So it was a really good learning process. And when each team sort of learned about what each other's concerns were, and we saw the successful onboarding of the individual sites, and we celebrated those things together, then a lot of that initial anxiety or fear sort of went away, right? So I think it was a very good experience.
Okay, thanks. You talked about collaboration essentially between IT and OT, but there are some proponents that we must actually go beyond nice collaboration between these two groups, but actually have IT and OT cybersecurity run by a single group in the organization rather than separately by two separate groups. What are your thoughts on this approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think having cybersecurity run by two separate groups, that was actually the previous model that Astronaut subscribed to, where we had all our engineers running cybersecurity for the OT domain, and then IT would take care of IT cybersecurity on their own. But with the recent cybersecurity enterprise-wide program, we sort of collapsed everything under a single governance, under a single CISO. Yeah, so that worked out to be a lot better because, as I mentioned in my earlier slides, security really is just a small subset of what OT engineers typically do. So there wasn't sufficient focus on OT cybersecurity at the time. But now that's totally changed today.
Oh, so you're saying there's a single cybersecurity organization now at Petronas?
That's right. And it used to be staffed by IT security professionals, but now we have embedded OT security professionals in there as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And as time goes by, this is really mainly because of the available resources in Malaysia. We typically only had IT security or OT engineers. But through our program, we actually sort of put those two teams together. So there was a lot of cross-pollination of experiences and skills. So today, we actually do have those hybrid skilled engineers here in our company.
Okay. That's good to know. And I would guess that there were some challenges to join the program. Do you want to highlight just a couple of things that proved to be a little bit more difficult that you had to overcome?
In general, I think never run a program in the time of a global pandemic, I guess. Okay. We started in 2019. That's just about when the pandemic hit. And this program was a very hardware intensive program. We needed to change out a lot of our switches and introduce new security hardware. And the global pandemic just really threw the spanner in the works. We also had a lot of restrictions of our team members going to sites to deploy these security measures. There were 2-week quarantine requirements that really just had a big drag on our program. So that was really the big one. But I think in general, getting the team to sort of come together and have the support of everyone wasn't really that big of a problem, because for Petronas, we're a very in a way top-down organization, right? So I think the leadership was very prudent, very smart about getting the message down from the top to cascade that information down, so everybody got in line, everybody was on board, and we had very good support from everyone.
All right, that's good to know. Let me go to some of the questions that I see that we've come in from our audience today. And the first one kind of touches on things that you mentioned, but this is from Rahul, and it says, given the shortage of OT security expertise, and he says in India, but I think this applies pretty much across the region, the shortage of expertise. What kind of training programs or certifications could you perhaps recommend for professionals looking to specialize in OT cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think the two that come to mind, first one being the one that I have is the IEC 62443 program. It consists of 4 modules. You take all the 4 exams, and then you're awarded a black badge, like a black belt in Taekwondo, to become an IEC 62443 expert. I think that's the one that's probably most globally recognized. The other one I'm aware of, but I don't have, is the GICSSP, I think, which is related to industrial cyber. Yeah, so these are the 2 training programs. But as far as upskilling, I think there are a lot of resources out there today. I think SENS Institute comes to mind as a very good resource for OT cybersecurity knowledge. In Malaysia, I think there are an increasing number of courses offered by universities, tertiary education centers to upskill people on industrial cybersecurity.
Okay, that's good to know. A question from Kagri Polat. This is about SOC, Security Operations Center. What about OT SOC? Can it be separated from IT SOC, or should it be integrated to the conventional IT SOC?
Okay, that's a great question. My point of view, both models work. I've seen both models working well. In Malaysia, we do have a pure play OT SOC set up by a third party. Here in Petronas, we have a hybrid SOC. So it really depends on your requirements of your organization. For us, a hybrid SOC works pretty well. But when we say hybrid SOC, the infrastructure is still kind of separate, right? Because the technology used to extract data from OT is different from the technology used to extract data from IT. So at the end of the day, even though they're sharing the same office, the technology that brings in all of the data is different, right? So it's still 2 separate platforms. I hope that answers that question. But to me, both models do work.
Both models can work. So I hope that answers that question from Kagri. A question about funding for the program. This question is about budgeting is probably a challenging area. Any tips, strategies you can give us to how to manage the budget effectively to ensure a sustainable, thriving cybersecurity team? Any tips, Michael, on that side of things, the funding side of things?
Is it funding for the enterprise-wide project or for operational?
For that kind of program, I believe, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think for us, we had to really deliver at speed, and to wait for the individual sites to conjure up a budget for us to run our program, that would be rather inefficient. So it's a really good idea to have like a central pot of resources that you can deploy very quickly. Also, I would like to add that taking care of your contracting matters upfront is really important, because that takes a really long time to get those contracts out to those vendors, especially for a company like Petronas, where we don't only have one OT vendor. We have more than 100 different vendors out there, and to issue out contracts for every single one it just takes a really long time. So get contracting out of the way as fast as possible. Have a central resource, central pot of money where you can deploy those, and then worry about recouping that cost later. I'm sure it can be worked out.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think one of the things that you mentioned, Michael, was that in the presentation was IT security was located centrally, while OT tends to be distributed, presumably at the operating sites. Did that give you any issues in terms of the IT people were probably not meeting the OT people physically because of that geographic separation?
Yeah. I think it is a common problem when you have a very large enterprise where you have facilities on the ground and then you have a central sort of body to do governance and things like that. So having that face-to-face interaction is really, really important. We made it a point to ensure that those that are doing both the design also do deployments, right? So you put a name to the face or face to the name. And it becomes a lot more personal when the designer also is there on site deploying those solutions. So it's really important to have that FaceTime, also that personal touch. And again, like I said, being a top-down organization, once the big boss on top says go, it's a go, right? It's really important to have that buy-in.
Right. Okay. I hope that answers that question. We have a question here from Basri Berahim, and I'll try to paraphrase it, but I think that it's really the question about you're from the oil and gas industry, and for your cybersecurity efforts, did you look at any other sectors that perhaps where IT and OT were already working together? I mean, this person mentions the transportation sector, but perhaps more broadly, did you look for learnings from any other sectors outside of oil and gas in terms of what they're doing for cybersecurity?
That's a good question. No, unfortunately, we were very focused on the energy sector because that's what Petronas does. But if there are learnings from other sectors, then I'll be glad to hear it because we had a lot of lessons learned from what we did. Thanks for that. That's a good point.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let me see this question. Just come in. What are the best practices? Yeah, so I mean, it's more of a general thing. I think from Sabi Goswami, where to start in the cyber journey for the enterprise? Is there a starting point in terms of? I think in your case there was, like you say, it was a very kind of a top-down corporate decision. But generally, is there some kind of starting point where companies should look to begin?
I think it's really important to talk to people who are familiar with setting a cyber strategy. It's really important to have a proper strategy to deploy a program with this kind of scale, right? So we did have consultants work with us. They had some experience of deploying a large-scale enterprise-wide program like we had. So that I felt was very helpful. And also, we could talk to your peers, right? Those that are in the same industry who have done this before. Like me, for example, right? Yeah, I'm open to having conversations after this webinar as well to talk about our experience. I think it's really important to have a community. That's one of the reasons why I set up that pincer or industrial end user roundtable. It's really important to have that strong community in the region to share ideas. I'm a firm believer of you can compete on things like technology or new discoveries and intellectual property, but when it comes to core things to a business like safety or security, these are the things that we should be sharing information about, and collaborating on. So grow that community, get in touch with people who are familiar with the subject matter, and I think that would be very helpful.
Okay. This question is about legacy systems. So how do you recommend prioritizing risks in OT environments where legacy systems are still in use?
Right, fantastic question, and that's something that keeps me up at night because it is
Right.
definitely a challenging subject. You know, like I mentioned, the typical life cycle of an OT system is about 10 to 20 years. A typical life cycle of a Microsoft operating system is about less than 10 years, right? So yes, and dealing with legacy systems is really something that is quite a common issue with OT engineers. What's important is to understand the constraints that you're working with when it comes to legacy systems. Simple things like, you clearly can't patch your system. You clearly do not want to connect your system to the DMZ or any other network, right? Some basic rules like that. Have an idea of what you want to do with your OT systems that are obsolete. How can you secure them, right? With the constraints that you have. Come up with a guideline and then follow that guideline. I think the simple practice of just physically air gapping that system that does wonders in terms of security. It's really simple, anyone can do it, and it's really effective as well. So have sort of a list of checklist of things you need to do given the constraints that you have, and then implement that.
Okay. I think that's good. I think that's good advice. So I know this session is really about the people side of cybersecurity as opposed to the processes and technology, but we have quite a number of technical questions coming in. You're limited to answer these if you can, but from Selva Guru, it says, what tool are you using for OT asset inventory? And does it tally automatically in line with the actual number of assets in operation?
Yeah, I can't answer that because that's
sure.
that would be revealing our technology and
Sure,
features that cannot be seen as any particular brand.
So,
but I will answer that whatever OT asset monitoring tool that you're using will not be perfect right out of the box. There typically is like a learning period of a month or two before the data stabilizes, and then there will be a series of sort of fine-tuning of assets. Because we've had issues where some of the assets, IP addresses from the IT world were detected by those OT asset monitoring tools. We've also very common for OT machines to be dual home, so you have multiple IP addresses for the same machine. Some solutions are not smart enough to know the difference. These OT solutions don't work right out of the box. There will be a learning period of time, and you will have to do a lot of pruning and fine tuning. But there are a lot of good solutions out there. I think generally in the market, the number of solutions sort of consolidated already. So whatever you have left in the market today are pretty good solutions already.
I'm sure you're contacted by vendors on a regular basis.
All the time.
Your position. Yeah. So, in fact, related to that, there is this question about emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and zero trust. To what extent can these enhance industrial cybersecurity?
Yeah, great question. Let's tackle the AI question first. I think for now, AI is still a very much IT thing. A lot of the AI engines have to reside in large data centers. That's where we consider IT, right? But for OT, we're also looking at how can we bring the power of AI down to the edge, right? And then AI really becomes part of the OT domain, right? So when that comes, then well, we're not there yet, but we're kind of preparing for that. That will eventually happen. So using AI for security, I think is fantastic. Definitely helps with our SOC today. And also when it comes to detection, behavior detection, and to predict incidences before they happen, definitely effective. So AI is already available when it comes to OT security, and it's something that you can already exploit. The second thing was after AI was
zero trust.
Zero trust. Okay, that was the buzzword for 2023, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone was talking about zero trust. But when it comes to OT, I think the tip that I got was that you can't buy a single solution to resolve your zero trust requirements. It's really a combination of different cybersecurity strategies and technologies that you need to put in place to make zero trust work, right? Yeah, but that was the buzzword in 2023. You don't hear it so much nowadays.
Yeah. In fact, we had a DTC session on zero trust in one of them. So I think that was also in 2023. So
Okay.
we do have a couple of questions, Michael, on patching from different people. So that seems to be an area of concern. And I'll paraphrase, try and combine them, but it's really about how do you ensure your suppliers provide timely patches for the OT equipment? And do you kind of get the same response from different vendors? Like, I mean, there are some mentioned here like Yokogawa, Honeywell, but perhaps it's really your overall approach to patching, and how does that kind of work in operation?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, and it's a very very pertinent question as well when you're doing maintenance of all these OT systems. My firm belief is that you don't patch based on a set frequency, right? I think when we were first starting out, we thought about how do we have a cadence of patching. It could either be once a month or once every quarter, but for OT, once a month is out of the question. You can't patch once a month; it's just not reasonable. And even on a quarterly basis, it was such a challenge for our team. So what we're trying to do now, and actually what we've already implemented, is having risk-based patching, right? So what your team really needs to do is to spend time to look at what are those patches addressing. Do you really need those patches? Are those patches really addressing security issues, or are they just nice to have capabilities, right? Or little flowers that you add on to your Windows workstation, right? And then coming back to the point about risk-based patching is that understand what the patch does. What does it address? Is it addressing something that's of high risk? If it is, then it's worth your time. But if it's addressing a low sort of criticality issue, then just wait for the next window, right? So having that kind of intelligence together with assigning a risk or sort of an impact rating to your assets, that gives you an overall picture of risk, whether you can tolerate that risk, without patching the system, or do you patch the system? So it should be something that's really risk guided.
Okay, I think that's very good piece of information and advice. Risk-based patching. I'll take this question from Justin as our final question today from our audience. In your adoption journey, what are the KPI or the milestones you put in place to measure your success? How did you measure that success of your program?
A little bit need a little bit more clarity about. The success of the program. KPIs.
Yeah, did you measure as you were going along? Did you have some certain milestones or certain KPIs?
Sure. If you remember the previous slide where I had multiple work streams, right? We had the governance stream, we had the SOC stream, we had the site level deployment stream. All of these were projectized, right? Every one of them had a certain milestone to hit in terms of deployment, getting things rolled out, getting things going live, getting documents issued. So all of them had different milestones. You have to projectize everything. You have to track everything to make sure that the program is a success.
Okay. I think that's again very good feedback and advice. And Michael, I think we've really put you through the ringer with about 20 questions, and really appreciate you taking time to answer all these. And again, also very valuable, I think, learning today from Michael Long of Petronas about his own experience with OT cybersecurity and how to effectively deploy that in relation to the organization and collaboration with IT and OT cybersecurity teams. So my own thanks to you, Michael, for contributing today to our DTC webinar. And again, very, very valuable learnings I think we've got from you, and I'm sure our audience would agree with that. With that, let me hand back for now to my ARC colleague for the closing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob and Michael. It was a great discussion, and the presentation also was excellent from Michael. We got lots of audience Q&A also. So we have an announcement from ARC for the upcoming events. Our next Digital Transformation Council Asia Online will be announced soon. And our ARC Advisory Group Forum Asia has been scheduled in 3 region. One is from Bangalore, India, event on 10th and 11th July 2025, and Tokyo, Japan event 8th July 2025, and Singapore event in August 2025. So we are having our US America Forum, which is being scheduled next week from 10th to 13th February at Orlando. And we have our Europe Forum, which is being scheduled in the month of May from 5th to 7th at Spain. So if anybody is interested to participate in this event, please contact us for the details, and we'll be helping you on this. We also would like to thank Michael, Principal Instrumentation and Control Engineer Group Technical Solutions, Petronas, for participating in this DTC Asia webinar. We also thank Bob Gill from ARC Advisory Group for moderating the session. And we also like to thank all the delegates for participating in this webinar. Finally, we thank ARC Advisory Group India team for all the logistics. Thank you all once again. Thank you.